Hello everyone, my name is Steven and today I'm going to be creating a new website from scratch based on Node.js and running on Heroku. So to get started here, we're going to create a new repository in my GitHub. This is going to be my personal website that I just bought the domain for, so stevendahl.pro. That's what this is going to be for, so that's what I'll call the repository. I'm going to add a, let's see, any of them in here I actually want to use. No, I'll make my own gitignore. Okay, so I'm just going to create this repository. Now it gives me some instructions here, but all I really need, I'm using WebStorm, so all I need is my GitHub URL right here. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to open WebStorm. Now in WebStorm, I'm going to check out a project from version control, and I'm going to paste in that URL there and clone the repository. Yes, I will create the directory. So now I've got my project here, and first thing I need to do for any Node.js project, let's npm init this to set up our package.json. Now I'm gonna accept the defaults for all of this, except for I like starting my version numbers at 000 because this is not a completed site. When I release the first production version of this site, it will be 1.0. Till then, it is some lesser version. No description. Our entry point is going to be server/index.js because this will contain both our client-side code and our server code in the server and client directories. A test command will come later. It already picked up my Git repository. No keywords. I am the author. License, I will swap that out in a second because I'm not licensing this to anyone other than to look and learn from. Is this okay? Yes, that is a good package.json file. So now we can come over into my code here and see that JSON file license. This is going to be private. So right up at the top here, it's telling me I'm missing a gitignore, so I'm just going to let that create it for me. We're going to not use any templates. And it's asking me if I want to add files to Git. Now, I do not want to add anything in the idea folder, so that's the first thing we're going to add to Git. I don't want to add any IntelliJ specific files to my repository. So now that we've got this empty file here, let's start off with .idea saying you will be ignored. Next thing we need to do is add my package.json file to Git. So git add all. So now that package.json is picked up by Git. I could have also done that through the right-click menu, but command line is faster for a lot of things. Okay. So next step, we're going to skeleton out this application. So first we're going to have let's make our server main file. So server/index.js. And this will be the starting point for our Node.js application that we will fill out in a second. Second file we're going to have is client/index.html. And I'm going to say automatically add everything to Git to this point because I don't like that pop-up. So let's start with our HTML here. Just make a basic HTML file. I'll add all the proper tags to this later, but we just want to get this up and running perfectly. Okay, so very basic HTML file. Now let's go to our index file, and our Node.js application is going to require a couple of things. So first thing we're going to need is Express. I'm using the package manager Yarn, which is almost identical to NPM and is like an overlay of NPM that's a little bit quicker. So Yarn add Express. Okay, and so we have Express, and we can see that our package JSON file has Express in it now. And it also added this yarn.lock file, which will make sure I don't get any weird dependency. Basically lists all the versions of all my dependencies in the project so that there's no dependency issues. When I've had many times where I've been making a large website and some things will just suddenly break without changing anything. And it's because a dependency in here somewhere updated. So yarn prevents that for us. Very nice thing to have. So I'm going to add that to the project also. So now that we've got that, let's write out our index.json. So I'm going to first import Express. Okay. And we're going to initialize our application. Tell our application to serve all the files in our client directory as static files. And finally, tell our app to listen on port 80. And as a second parameter for this, we're going to pass a arrow function just telling it to log when it starts listening so that we can see our app started. Now this is giving me some errors because it's not recognizing the ES6 syntax. So I'm going to go into settings and fix that real quick. If I can remember where settings are on this panel. Okay, so we're going to go down to languages and frameworks, JavaScript. And I'm going to be eventually using Flow and React, so I'll set this to Flow, and you can see that includes JSX for React and ES6. And why not prefer strict mode in case I forget to set it anywhere. Which reminds me, I forgot to set that at the top. So use strict. This just makes JavaScript behave a little more reasonably and optimize itself a little bit better. Okay, so this application is ready. Let's run it and see if it works. Oh, wrong name. Server/index.js. Okay, so you see we're listening on port 80, so that's all good. Let's go back to our web browser and localhost. And we get it works. Okay, so the next step is to get this on Heroku. So we already have our repository here, and we're going to tell Heroku to watch this repository, and whenever the repository master branch changes, that's what's going to be deployed on Heroku. So in Heroku, let's go create a new application. Okay, give it a name, create it. And on deployment method, we're on the deploy tab, and on deployment method, we are going to tell it it's deploying from GitHub. It already knows my name here because I've attached my account, so repo name, I'll tell it to find all my repos. And let's get Steven, connect that, and enable automatic deploys. So now every push to master will deploy a new version of this app. Great. So if we go to our overview, let's see if we can force a redeploy here. Oh, you know what we forgot to do? We forgot to push the code back to GitHub so it knows about all this wonderful stuff. So I'm going to commit all this. You can see the list of files it's committing and all the unversioned files. Oh, that's another thing we need to do. We really need to add our node modules to our ignore file. There we go, so that's in there. And let's commit this. No unversioned files this time. We're good to go. Commit and push. So this will push all these code changes up to GitHub. Let's switch over there. And in GitHub, if I refresh this, now we see all the files we just created. If we switch over to here, and we should have automatic deploys enabled. On our master branch. Okay, so I'm going to just force it to deploy right now. It should deploy automatically, and we can see our build, Heroku build going right here. Okay, so that is complete and deployed. So up at the top, I'm going to tell it to open my application, and let's see it. Looks like it's not quite ready yet. Maybe because we're in HTTPS mode. Only thing I can think of is the port. So I'm going to open up one of my other projects real quick and double check that the port is correct. Okay, so there is one thing we're going to do. That is why Heroku is not working. Heroku passes in the port that we use as an environment variable, and so it is not port 80 that Heroku wants to listen on. So we're going to create a new constant. And we're going to pull that port out of our environment. If the port in the environment is not set, we're going to use 80 as our port. So now all we need to do is swap this out to use the variable and commit. Use the port passed in from the environment. Okay, commit and push. And now over in the Heroku side, let's see if this has picked up the deploy or not. So I'm not sure why automatic deploys is not picking up now. Maybe it was missing master before there. So now that that's actually filled in, because we didn't have a master branch before I did my git push, and I set this up before that. So we're going to re-enable that. Automatic deploys from master are enabled. Unfortunately, that won't pick up the last commit I did, so I'll do a manual deploy again. Rebuild master. Okay, and we're deployed. So let's head over here and see if we got it works. So we're obviously having errors, so let's see what Heroku logs say about this. So these are our server logs. As we see, every time this comes in, our application is crashing. So obviously there is something wrong with our application still. Double check that it was working on local still. I forgot one step on this and I just realized. So Heroku needs a, let me double check my other project again just to be sure. Heroku needs a script in our package.json that tells it how to start our application. So we're just going to give it that little start command. Now let's run npm start and see if this guy works. Listening on port 80 and in our web browser. Web browser works. Let's do a commit of that. Go over to Heroku. And now we can see that it picked up that push automatically this time. Now, so we know automatic deploys are working. We can view that build progress if we want. Launching release 7, so it has been deployed. And finally we have it works. Okay, so from here I've got the basic framework for my application, and I can easily add to this with whatever front end and back end setup I want. So I will start that in my next video. Thanks for watching.